Where are we at right now?
2 o'clock.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we could start it without him after. Just give it a couple minutes, see what happens.
Give them a couple more.
Yeah.
We're still waiting for one board member. We'll give them a couple minutes and then if you don't show up, we'll go.
Couple minutes, you should have said 10, that's his average.
John, I don't know if you ever ended up looking for that Copic.
Yes, I did, and I couldn't find one.
Did you? Okay.
I answered you back, no luck. Oh, you answered me back, look under find them.
Yeah, right.
I didn't answer it, I've been so busy, but I cannot find it in my well logs. It might be somewhere wherever I can find some more well logs, because I've got literally hundreds of them.
Yeah, but on to Scott. And Scott was out of the office, but he said he'd talk to his clients and get back with us.
See what they want to do. Lisa.
Oh, good. Here, let me take these.
Can't do it anyway.
Yeah, I had to squint.
That's a squint.
Yeah, pretty small print.
Is there really a bounty for wolves
There
in
he is.
Canada? Interesting. You are.
Oh, just for you.
Mark, I've got a bucket for you in the back of my truck.
thank you.
You gotta remind me.
They're all handy. I had them all set out.
Okay, let's call this meeting to order. Lisa, would you like to read the minutes from the last?
Yeah, sure. Okay, the minutes from June 6th, 2000. And Rod, only on 6/27, the meeting was continued to June 27th. Public present, Anna Barica, Okanogan Land Trust, Natalie Kuehler, and Roger Rowat, Witchy-What Canal Company. Rod Knoll called the meeting to order at 2:15. The minutes from May 2nd were accepted. 2 action items. Megan Kernan made a motion to accept a new application from Crown Columbia Water Resources. Mark Miller made a motion to approve the ROE and ROD for Martin Wick 1704. The board continued the Aston Irrigation Association application, continued Vaughn Jolly, continued Sunshine Agriculture, continued U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, continued Kinross Gold application, continued Gebers Farms applications, continued George and Karen Zittel application, discussed the Donald E. and Lonnie L. Kopic application. A motion was made to continue the meeting to June 27th. On June 27th, the board discussed the Crown Columbia application. Natalie Kuehler and Roger Rowat were present, and Megan Kernan made a motion to accept the ROE and ROD for the Martin Wick application 1704 and 1705.
Could I just clarify that I was not present I was only present on the 27th.
Oh, that's, you know what?
As was Roger, we were not present at
I can see that the sentence didn't get ended. It was a cut and paste thing. I'll remove that before I post it. Thank you. Okay, and those are the minutes from June.
And just to clarify, I was not present on the 27th.
Okay. Anything else?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Now for the business at hand.
Yes.
This group first. Is there anyone present here that did not send in a written comment? Okay. Do you guys have a spokesperson for the bunch of you?
Is there a plan? Do you plan to send in a written comment that could be a part of the official record that goes to the Department of Ecology? Or are you here to make just a public comment, a verbal comment?
Well, I have to say that we were told that it needed
Okay.
So if that is extended, I would very much like.
Well,
to.
the date has not been extended as part of our legal publication process, that it ends when it ends. But I have taken a written comment today from somebody, and all I'm going to do for my official record, and legally, if anybody here knows anything different, please speak up. I'm just going to include it as part of my official record and put these comments received on such and such date.
Okay.
They will still be part of the public record. Mhm. And you can get those to me by email. I can give you that today. You can, or you can write them. A good third of the 63 comments received so far by email, and that was fine, so. Okay.
Is there a date by which the additional public comments need to be submitted?
What'd she say?
Is there a date by which we want to receive the additional comments? I mean, Mark, now that it's kind of, I don't.
Generally requires that the board provide some response to every comment that comes in regardless of when, prior to the decision. So it would be my expectation that every comment that's received.
While it's on the agenda.
As long as it's on the agenda up to the board makes a decision, there will have to be a response included in the decision. It really doesn't resolve.
My name is Melanie Rowland. I'm here on behalf of the Methow Valley Citizens Council, and I was advised by the person who signed the Citizens Council letter that it had not been included. It was submitted on
It was.
July 19th, so is it now included?
Yeah, it would, I can double check for you, but I just responded to that email. Yeah, it was. There was a lot of, I went through and made an Excel spreadsheet, because I got a lot of double receipts, and some people also sent theirs to ecology, and I got those. So, yes, I have received. I can double check before you leave if you want. Yeah, for sure. Do you want me to give you my email for those that want to make a comment that I can?
Yes, please.
Okay, so the email, I'll just wait for y'all to get your pen and paper ready. I should have just brought like some cards or something, but, I could write it on the board.
I was gonna say, I don't.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
probably,
think-
that'd be better.
I don't know if is there a pen over there?
Yeah,
Okay.
no. Well, it's pretty easy, I can just say it. Let's see, dry erase. So the email address is, L,
It's 50.
for my first name is Lisa, and then it's my last name, it's all lowercase.
50,
D,
and it goes to the
D
college,
is in
not
David,
us.
E is in Edward,
There
V
you
is
go.
in Victor, E-R-A. You all see that? Is that big enough? LDEVERA@NWI.net. Let me, can I see that Excel spreadsheet, just to make sure. So, who sent the letter from Methow Valley Citizen Council?
Laura Super?
I think I remember that one. Yeah, Lora.
I noticed on the sign-in sheet, there's a question, you wish. Sign-in sheet of people that look like they wanted to comment.
Okay, so that sign-in sheet, actually, you guys beat me here. I come from Wenatchee, and I didn't have my Water Conservancy Board sign-in sheet. That's actually just a general county, but that's fine. That's a good way to start. I mean, I'll leave it up to the board if, I don't know if do we have time for individual comments today, or?
How many of you folks present would like to make a comment? 3, 4? We got time for that, don't you? Sure. Okay, you first.
Roger Road Company, as my letter that I submitted said, and as I think everybody else, almost everybody else in the room is here, you know, the Chewak Canal Company has great concern about this transaction going forward and the implications to agriculture, commerce, and everything else in the valley. I think that the numbers were presented in the application are absurd, and if they weren't absurd, the canal company and most of these people in the room wouldn't have an objection. We've given information to Crown Columbia to show them that it seemed like those numbers were completely out of line and they didn't change them. So that leads me to believe that they're going forward with trying to get an unreasonable amount of water. And so at that point, the Chewak Canal Company and most of these people and probably more will continue to, you know, fight this battle until it's resolved.
Are you you're Roger?
I'm Roger.
Okay, just want to make sure for the record. And we have your official letter as part of the record.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, next.
My name is Jerry Heller, and I'm a member of the stockholder in the Chewak Canal Company and also on the board. I'm curious, I'd like to get some explanation of exactly how this process works, because right now, I don't have a sense of that, and I don't know how many people in this room do, but we'd like to get the rundown of what this process will go through, and if you could do it loud enough so that we can hear on here, I'd
Should we have
appreciate
Mark do
it.
that? Mark, would you like to make that? Please.
Sure, if that's the board's,
Sure.
could you stand up, sir? Absolutely. So for those of you who aren't familiar with the way water transfers work through the Conservancy, Mark Marquis, and I represent the Lundgrens, Peterson and Marquis Law Office. So the way an application works, if an owner of a water right desires to change it, remove it, or transfer it, they have a couple different options for doing so. They can apply directly to the Department of Ecology, who will process it, but it generally takes years, if not decades, to do that. Or there are local county conservancy boards, which can do it in a more expeditious manner, so that people can get a more timely response. And typically, you know, it might take 7 to 8 months for an application to run completely through from the time the application is filed with the Conservancy Board. So the application that's been filed reflects the quantities that are expressed in the water claim document. So this is a water claim which is being proposed for transfer. A water claim is different than a state-issued water right. A state-issued water right, the state issues a permit, and then at some point the permit will change to a certificate as a result of a field examination. The ecology staffer will come out, they'll review the site, they'll see that the water that was requested in the permit has actually been put to use the way they said it was going to be, and then a certificate will be issued for precisely the quantities that have been put to beneficial use. With the water claim, this is, I believe it's a 1907 or a 1910 surface water claim. It's through that process. It is a pre-code water right, a common law water right, that is established based upon a historic use of water, you know, back to the early 1900s or before. If you get the file from Ecology on this particular water claim, all you're going to find in there is the claim document. The claim document is the landowner's articulation of what they believe their water use is. It generally is not based upon any scientific analysis or engineering analysis. It's simply, oftentimes it's the landowner's best guess at what their water rights are, and oftentimes landowners are generous with what they believe the extent of their water claim is. But because there has been no examination ever performed on this water right, it is the only reference point at this time for the extent of the validity of the water claim. So the Lundgrens wish to transfer a portion of this water claim. The quantities that are expressed in the application come directly from the amounts that are on the because, like I said, there is no other reference point to dispute or support the amounts that are in that claim. It's simply what Lundgren's put on there. So for the intents and purposes of the application, those are the quantities that are reflected in there. Now, you know, as most of you are aware, the canal, because of the screen that's been put on the end of the canal, I believe that the maximum input capacity on that is 36 CFS.
34.
Or 34 CFS. You know, the Lundgren's claim asserts 33 CFS. Well, you can do the math on a napkin and probably doesn't line out. You know, if they were using 33 CFS, there would be nothing but a trickle running down the canal. But again, for the intents of the application only, all that's included in there is what's expressed on the claim.
But all that said, what happens today and what happens after today?
So we are in, when you file an application with the Conservancy Board, there's a process that you have to go through. And one of the first processes, a legal notice has to be published, so that the public is aware that there's a proposed water change that's been accepted by the board. The notice gets posted, there's a 30-day comment period, and then after that, the board has an opportunity to work with the consultant, in this case it's me, to develop the contents of the report of examination, which will and has to and must quantities of water that have been perfected through beneficial use and maintained under the law. So, you know, the report, and we're not to that point yet, but the report will conclusively express the amount of the quantities of water that the Lundgrens have perfected and maintained. And their transfer will be limited to only those quantities of water. That is their property right, which they have perfected, nothing more than that. Whether it's once the board is satisfied with the content of the report of examination, they make a decision on it, and then it goes down to the Department of Ecology. The Department of Ecology does their own independent review of the board, and they have up to 75 days where they can either accept the decision, they can modify the decision, can affirm the decision, or they can make the decision, or they can they can send it back for further work if they don't believe there's sufficient data to support the decision.
As this report is being prepared, what involvement does the CHUWA have because of the significant impact that it has on the shareholders there? Are they involved as the report's made, or is it a one-sided deal that you guys put together?
Well, ecology will require that the board's decision address and respond to every concern that is part of the record. So many of you have written in decision. So if you have concerns about something, this is the forum to make those objections. And if the board's decision does not address everybody's concerns, ecology will deny the decision. So the decision will get bumped back to the board, and they'll say that we don't believe you adequately addressed the comments and concerns that were brought up during the review process.
So this is the start of
They're entitled to a certain amount,
What's that?
a certain amount of water.
Absolutely.
That's one thing.
Yes.
Is the determination of how much. And then the second part is, that concerns people, is that they can transfer it out of the valley, right? That's not contested. They can do whatever they want with it.
Well, it's their property, just like all of you have property rights. So if you want to sell a piece of your land, you know,
Yeah, but we
you
can't
can do that.
transfer it out of the valley.
Well, because it's with land, it's sitting in place. But for those of you who have water rights, you could transfer portions of your water rights.
You used the word consultant when you said you were going to work with the board.
Yes.
Are you hired by the board as a consultant, or are you independent of the board and represent the Lundgrens as their attorney?
I represent the Lundgrens as their attorney.
I just want to clarify
Yeah,
that, because you used the word consultant, and that's a little misleading, that the board is independent and you're simply, as the representative of the applicant, simply supplying them with more information.
The decision is completely, the contents of the decision are completely the ownership of the board.
But you represent.
In essence, he is a consultant to this board.
Well, he's a consultant to the applicant,
Yeah.
not to the board.
Okay, so he's a
Right.
consultant.
To the
so
applicant.
He's the attorney for the applicant.
That's right.
Right.
Correct.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that.
And I,
Yeah, that's a good clarification,
and I
thank
wanna
you.
clarify, I think when he says he's a
Does that mean
consultant,
that once his report is concluded as a consultant for the applicant, that is submitted to us so that we also have an opportunity to review that and respond to that? Or is this our last take right here today? Because we don't have any information to deal with at this point. And apparently he's gonna be providing a bunch of information for you folks over the next period of time. And that's what I'm trying to figure out is how much input do we get into that? Because the amount of input we've had is preliminary at this point, just like he said, his application is preliminary. There's a lot of work to be done on his side, and there's a lot of response that we need to make on our side. And how does that happen?
Every board meeting is open to the public. So as we continue to work on this, as the report of exam gets submitted to the board, it's not like we would rubber stamp it or make a decision that particular meeting. That once the report of exam is completed, there's still a field exam that needs to be done by board members. Board members will go out and we will investigate what's up there, look at what's going on, how it's been operated. So we'll go to there, go to the site and look that over. Once he submits the report of exam to the board, we'll still have, it may take, as he said, 6 or 8 months. You know, we won't make a decision the first month, but every meeting that we have here is open to the public, and you can come in and you can look and listen to what's been taking place. Now, I don't know if, as he said, there's going to be a response to everybody that's commented, that's commented here today. Whether we will send a report of exam to every individual, maybe. That's a possibility. It's gonna be big, I would assume, before it's all done, because we're gonna have a lot of comments in there. So this thing's gonna be, you know, some of these decisions, some of these report of exams can end up being 20 pages. So I assume we can do electronic version. If we have email addresses from everybody, then we can send it out that way.
I have a question.
One at a time. Yes, ma'am.
I'm streaming live and somebody just asked online, will this report be available to the public or only?
Every meeting that we have is open to the public. I mean,
And
as far as us publishing it, no, I don't believe that would happen, but, I mean, the meetings are open to the public. Anybody that comes can ask questions, if they request something like, then we can put.
Request from the secretary to have a copy?
And all
No.
information that is filed.
Oh, they cannot.
No, that increases our expenses exponentially. We're on a budget, believe it or not. And everything that she does is charged off to the amount that this was paid, that was paid in on this account. Would we make a whole bunch of reports? No. If you want to find out what's in it, come to every meeting. Yes, sir.
And I'm happy to pass out some cards if you want to see drafts of the report of examination. You know, I'll do my best if you send me an email to put you on an emailing list, and I'll send you. There is nothing to hide here. There's no effort to hide information here.
Point of information, Mr. Chairman. Does the board have, since the subject, does the board have an independent consultant?
Our consultant is the Department of
The
Ecology.
Department of Ecology in Yakima.
We can ask for technical assistance from the Department of Ecology anytime that we feel like there's something over our head. And they have the final say, as he explained in his analysis earlier. I mean, even though the board makes this decision and it goes on to them, I mean, then they open it up for a comment period. I mean, you can send more comments. You know, it'll go online for 30 days, I believe, from Ecology, the report of exam as it's written. So then they'll accept more comments down there. So I mean, they have the final say. The board just basically puts all of this together. We're doing their legwork, you know, basically here today and talking with you folks and that kind of thing. We put it all together in a package, and then it goes off to Ecology, and they have the final say. But they are technical people. They're the one. I mean, we're just basically representing them. We're an arm of the Department of Ecology. That's basically what we are.
So that another point of information, is anybody here present from the Department of Ecology? other than you, John?
I don't think so.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I was wondering if the independently with the board in any other forum than the public meetings.
No.
I mean, communicating in writing is fine, because that's a document, but there won't be any ex parte,
No.
public record problem
No.
communications. Okay, thank you. Avoid that, obviously.
I'd like to comment, it's interesting, we're really slicing hairs about this term consultant. And I think when he represented himself as a consultant, he means he's working for his client. There's nothing wrong with calling him a consultant. And when our chairman said that to us, he's a consultant or he's a consultant to us, that's a question of context of the sentence, consultant. He's not representing our board. I'll make that really clear. And we are, and maybe this is going too far, but we're always a little skeptical about, our job is to make sure that we're filtering the consultant's reports. I mean, we look at the ACQ and the instantaneous rate, the annual consumptive quantities and those things, and no consultant can change the facts. He'll represent what he believes to be the case, and we'll study those things very carefully, and so will the DOE. And actually, as long as I'm speaking, Roger, you mentioned that if the numbers fell in line with what you believe to be accurate.
Realistic, yes.
That you wouldn't protest, is that true? I'm not
Yes.
being an advocate either way, but that's interesting to me. So the Chihuahua, when you said Chihuahua, what do you represent them? Are you their chairman?
I'm the president.
Okay.
Yes, and so the Chihuahua Canal Company, obviously, if you've read through all the material, per a 1910 agreement, delivers water to what now is the Lundgren Farm through our head structure,
Follow
under
that.
a separate water. And the Lundgrens are not shareholders, they're not part of the Chihuahua Canal Company. It's just an old agreement that was buried in 25 boxes of paperwork until a month or two ago.
So the Chihuahua would not protest. I kind of want to reiterate that. You're saying you would not protest it if the numbers were.
Yeah,
So
perhaps I could clarify, so.
that's an important piece of this puzzle.
Yeah, I'm Natalie Kruller, I'm the consultant. By that I mean attorney for the Chihuahua Canal Company.
Would you stand up so the listeners can
Oh,
hear
yeah.
so well?
So I'm Natalie Kruller, I'm the attorney for the Chihuahua Canal Company. And yes, in our written objection, we said we've done our examination. The amount of water that the Lundgrens in fact have and could sell is something on the order of 6 acre-feet per year. And if that in fact is what they're proposing to transfer to Crown Columbia, and that is noted to be interruptible by the Chihuahua in-stream flow, because this claim wasn't filed until the 1998 claim period, so all prior water rights can't be impaired by it, including in-stream flow water rights, then the Chihuahua does not have an issue with that. What the Chihuahua has an issue with is the extraordinary numbers that were presented and that were affirmed to be accurate and have been used in the last 5 years in the application.
Well, CFS, we've heard that term. Of course, that kind of refers to an instantaneous rate. You just referred to an annual consumptive quantity, and you said 6 acre-feet?
Yeah, that's correct. We think it's
That's
about
what you-
6.75 acre-feet that over the last 5 years, that in the period of the last 5 years, have no longer been used because of the installation of pivots. Now, that may be an overestimation because we don't actually know when the last set of pivots were installed. It may be that no pivots were installed within the last 5 years, and then there's no water available for transfer at all. But looking at aerial images, we think there are 3 small pivots or maybe it's 4 small pivots that may have been installed within the last, a generous estimate of 20% irrigation efficiency that's achieved by installing pivots instead of using the wheel lines or the hand lines. That's where we come up with 6.75.
But you understand that, like, I'm using an approximate number, but let's say 4 acre-feet would do an acre.
Yeah.
So you're saying maybe an acre and a half?
What I'm saying, it's a tiny amount of water that's actually available for CF based on the information that we have looking at the facts on the ground. Because the Lundgrens are going to continue to irrigate, right? So they're not, and they have what they've estimated as wanting to continue to irrigate with is 184.8 acre-feet a year. We think that's probably reasonable. That's about 2 acre-feet a year per acre that they seem to be irrigating. They're not giving any irrigation up, So that irrigation is gonna continue, so really what we're looking at here is irrigation efficiencies that have been achieved over the last 5 years by the installation of pivots. We're not even sure that there were pivots installed within the last 5 years, but there are some that may have been installed in the last 5 years. They cover a very small acreage. And using a 20% NRCS told us, you know, on average, it's about 16% on the high end that you get efficiency improvement if you move from a hand line to a pivot. We just used 20% because we wanted to err on the high side. And using that figure, looking at what over the last 5 years moved to pivots is about 6.75 acre feet a year of water that has been saved. So that would be available. Now what that kind of, you know, putting that into CFS is a whole nother exercise. But in terms of the amount of quantity that we're really talking about in this application, and I think the reason why so many people are here, is that there's just a vast discrepancy between what's really there and what the application requested.
Thank you.
And just, I was gonna make a request, and it was made prior to this meeting, but I guess maybe not soon enough. Considering it's middle of the day, middle of the week, and out of the Methow Valley, you know, we did have a fair turnout. There are many, many more people who would like to come and would like to attend, and especially if this is gonna drag on for months. And I would like to formally request that this be held in the Methow Valley in a venue that will hold more people.
No. Well, that's something that a board, from my perspective, there's a lot of questions about process that the board's gonna have to figure out.
Okay.
This application has generated much more interest than many of the previous applications that the board has worked on. So, I mean, certainly, from my perspective as a board member, we will consider requests like that. One thing from my perspective, for you to consider is that, I mean, we're volunteers. You know, I drive here in my personal rig on my personal time. I live in Omak. It would be, you know, additional time and expense for me to get to the Met, generally unreimbursed. And so, you know, potentially, I could see why that would be problematic, particularly if we offered that opportunity for, you know, this application, consideration of this application, but what about the next one, and the next one, and the next one? And so, I certainly appreciate what the chairman is saying, that, you know, absolutely not. I think we'll have to consider that, but there are factors, including the fact that we're volunteers who are here, you know, on our own dime, essentially, and time. And that's something that we'll have to consider.
Okay.
We don't want to set a precedent.
No, and I understand that. I'm looking at the reality of 100 people having to potentially come over here to a meeting once a month to go
They
through
could
this
have,
process.
that 100 people could have one representative or 2 or 3 come and do that. And it'd be just as easy.
I think it's a diverse group of interests, so you know, certainly the Chiwa Canal Company could have me come.
Yes.
But I believe that there is a big number of people here who aren't actually associated with the Chiwa.
Who have other concerns.
But that's neither here nor there. I mean, for now, we have Katie with the live stream. That's definitely a benefit.
By the way, thank you, Mark.
And I'll throw in 2 bits. I mean, we're ways away, you know, and as he mentioned a few minutes ago, facts are gonna be facts. That's what's gonna happen when this all boils down. And, so, I mean, we're not gonna, we're an independent body. We're working exclusively under the thumb of the Department of Ecology, and if the facts don't line up, ecology's not gonna go with it anyway. So, I mean, we're a ways away from that. I mean, as they start preparing them, I don't know. Some of you have thought that we're going to take action today. That's not gonna happen. I mean, this is way down the road. I mean, we gotta they gotta do their analysis. All of these comments have to be put together with the report of exam, and, you know, that has to get submitted to us. We have to have time to review it. It could be months. We could put this under review. We may want to ask Ecology for technical assistance to help us with the report of exam, so that we don't make a mistake and spend a lot of time getting it back and forth. So, I mean, there's gonna be a multitude of time between now and the time that the board makes any decisions on this. So, I mean, it's not, there's no action to be taken today. We're taking to the record, and we'll move forward with it.
Yes.
Just so the board's aware, I mean, we've intentionally slow-tracked this application so that we can have an opportunity to work up front with some of the, well, the canal company in particular, to see if we can come to some common understanding of what their concerns are and maybe what the facts are. It's to our benefit to do that. If we submit a ROE that nobody agrees with, it's not gonna go anywhere. So you know, we're trying to do our homework with some of these folks in advance, so that when we get to the point where there's a ROD before the board, maybe some of the background concerns will have resolved themselves.
And that's good. We'd like to have that happen too.
Back there.
Was there another question or comment?
Yes, I was one of those who wanted to comment. I didn't know if you were moving on to other comments or wanted to stay on this topic. I'll stand up so everyone can hear me. As I said, my name is Melanie Rowland. I am a board member of the Methow Valley Citizens Council. The Methow Valley Citizens Council is a nonprofit private organization, and our mission is to raise community voice. I believe quite a few members of the community are here, and I believe many of them we are agreeing with their voice, and they are prompting us to do this for the protection of the Methow Valley's natural environment and rural character. So our concerns go beyond this particular transfer. Our concerns, I can't say that we have any particular knowledge of how much water the Lundgrens are entitled to. What we are concerned with is the process. And so far, from what I'm hearing, the process is, this is something that could be abused. And I'm not saying by the board, it can be abused by things like Crown Columbia Resources, who basically want to make money off of a public resource. Water is a public resource. I don't need to tell anyone in this room, least of all you members of the board, what a significant public resource water is in our area, and that it is going to become more and more significant with more scarcity in the future. The process of an investment company deciding that it will use the commodity of water, treat it like a commodity as opposed to a public resource, and I am not in any way denigrating property rights. There are property rights in water, but because it is such a critical public resource, and because this may be the first of many attempts by investors to commoditize this particular public resource, we are very concerned that the process for doing that be above board, be based on the science, and consider the water as a public resource. We're very concerned that this is water that would be based so-called in trust. The establishment of the trust water rights program was not to enable people to make money off their water and transfer it out of the area in which it has historically always been used. That was not the purpose of that trust water rights program. So what it does is it puts the water into the trust water rights program, and then it can go anywhere, and the buyer makes money off it. They're looking at this purely as a commodity. And this is a great concern to the Methow Valley Citizens Council and all of our members. So we urge you to think about this as a public resource. Think about this particular application as perhaps the first of many, as water becomes scarcer and therefore a more valuable commodity that people very far away from Okanogan County can profit by. Thank you.
Yes.
I'm going to make a comment as well. So my name is Olin Underwood. I work for Chelan County Public Utility District, and I'm here from Wenatchee. I'm here today to make a public comment because I wasn't aware I could submit comments still, and so we'll be
Any further comments? Yes, ma'am.
This is more a comment from the heart. I don't have a lot of expertise in water rights but my great-grandfather arrived in Winthrop in 1894, and my family's life has been involved in the ditches, dependent to some degree on the ditches since then. And I want the board to understand how important the Chihuahua Canal is to what, 186
Very,
groups?
but 184 shareholders. something like that.
184, plus the Peregrine Lake. It feeds Peregrine Lake, which is a major recreation point in the valley. And it would be, I know from experience, it would be a muddy hole without the canal running in there. So my heart is to say, please, there are many of us some people whose lives and businesses are dependent on the ditch. Many of us who now have kind of a finer reaction with the ditch. You know, I, for instance, have a few fruit trees and a garden and some shade trees that depend on the ditch, but they're important in my life. The ditch started in May of 1911. The Lundgrens arrived in the 50s. The ditch has been running that whole time, and we, ditch shareholders, have been participating in that organization and depending on that water for far more than 100 years. So the ditch is fiercely important. To some people, it's their livelihood. You know, I could probably get by without my garden and my fruit trees, but when I was growing up, my family had a half-acre garden, not on this ditch, on another one, but it makes me understand. My family's land was on the other side of the river, but we had a half-acre garden and we ate out of that. So it matters to people. So this is a plea to please, this isn't some little fluffy ditch that it's real and it's intertwined in people's lives. And please don't let money from outside drag away that right. We need that water, and we've been using it since 1911. Thank you.
What's your name?
Sheila Klain.
There was someone in the back.
I am Greg Mackey with Douglas County PUD, and I won't repeat exactly what Lean from Chelan PUD said. She did a good job of outlining the current state. I just wanted to give a slightly broader perspective on the fish conservation issues. Douglas County owns Methow Hatchery located in Winthrop, and the Chihuahua Acclimation Pond is part of that hatchery facility system. Under hatchery sharing agreements with Chelan County PUD and also Grant County PUD, oversight of these programs of the PUD need to operate under in order to meet our mitigation and also operate the Endangered Species Act towards recovery of extinction of population in the Methow Basin. And I just, we did send a written comment that outlines some of this, but I just wanted to make sure that was also on the record today. So it's a great concern to us that any of this could get disrupted. Thanks.
Thank you.
My name is Tom McCoy. I was the Department of Fish and Wildlife Area Manager from 2008 to 2014, and I'm also a shareholder on the Chihuahua Ditch. The Lundgren family were grazing permittees with me for that whole time, and Don's son, Cody, he had an irrigated lease with WDFW that I wrote at the time, and I know the family pretty well. I'm friends with them, and I'm pretty familiar with their agricultural operation. And I would submit that at no time in history have they had the capability of physically delivering 33 CFS to their property. And if any of you aren't familiar with what that looks like, my wife and I were talking about this on the way over. Envision the Twist River, the whole Twist River is kind of in the ballpark of how much water that is. And the ability to physically deliver that, to irrigate with it, it takes, that's enough for 1,000, 1,600 acres?
1,600 acres is about what that would cover.
Yeah. So, you know, to kind of tie in with what Roger said, I think it's absurd that that this number is even out there, despite what the claim is. There's no, and I think it'd be very easy to verify that number or the ability. If they had the infrastructure to deliver that kind of water, you'd be able to see it from satellites. I mean, it'd be readily apparent. And I also think as a shareholder and a number of neighbors here, it would be devastating to our property values to lose essentially functionally 100% of our irrigation water that we use now and have been using for decades for all kinds of purposes. And including like during the 2014 Carlton Complex fire, because it's a pressurized system, we were able to move our hand mines and basically put up a wall of water between our house and our neighbor Reva there, her house. That was a tremendous asset to us in being able to protect against that fire that was just over the crest of the hill from us. So anyhow, I wanted to share that with everybody so they have a context of how much water that is and how much they're using right now, which is, I can't say how much that is. That could be measured, but I don't think it's reasonable to think that they've ever been able to use 33 CFS.
Any more comments?
Yeah, I'm Gina McCoy, Tom's wife, a hydrologist, professional engineer with extensive experience in irrigation diversions, fish passage, fish screening. And, yeah, I would, if there's a very careful examination of water use in the last 5 years, I think, and they really need to prove up on what they're really used. And I think everybody on the ditch will stay whole. So I'll be watching very, very carefully on how that analysis is done, and making sure that I believe that it's the proper exercise. And I assume that ecology is also going to bring. I assume you have a very high standard of proof for what the really turns out to be. I'm assuming that ecology also will, but I very heartily support Melanie's points, and that's beyond your purview. I see that, and maybe we need to work to, sort of change some of the laws about this, but thank you for your time.
You're welcome. I think Rod explained it perfectly in case some of you might have missed that one or two or more of the board members will do an on-site visit, and that'll be all included in the report. And I'm quite sure you'll rest assured that they're probably not gonna get everything they asked for. They're like,
Brian Alexander from Washington State Parks. Did you receive area manager Lewis's letter to you regarding this topic?
What's the name that it was submitted under?
Rick Lewis. He's the area manager of the Okanogan Highlands. From Washington State Parks.
Do you see it on this one?
Said he emailed it.
Rick Lewis, Washington State Parks?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, number 3.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Underscore what Tom Coy said, the issue of public safety seems to be underscored by what Tom mentioned, and being able to set up defensive water lines in an area where we have significant fire management issues. That seems to be definitely within the purview of your board's responsibility. I'd also like to get clarification on what the board said earlier about disclosure of information from both consultants, from both attorneys. You mentioned we could attend your meetings. So where the rubber meets the road, when we walk in here, how do we actually see correspondence that you've had between consultants and with you and DOE? How is that information actually available in the public domain? Are you gonna have a binder? Are you gonna send it out in an email? You can scan it? How do we actually see that correspondence?
I'll let you answer that, Lisa.
It's my understanding not to be any correspondence outside of a public meeting. There'd be possibly, the only thing that happens normally is a draft record of examination is delivered to the board. As per our bylaws, we usually like them a couple of weeks beforehand. But Mark Marquis has offered that to you, if you would like to see a draft. The record of examination is essentially gonna be in draft form until the board signs it. And when the board does sign it, that's still just a recommendation to the Department of Ecology. The Department of Ecology makes the final decision. So there are no secret meetings, that I'm aware of.
Right, I'm talking about information that.
Like just emails back and forth?
So when you issue correspondence to DOE, is that information available to them?
Yes, it certainly could be. And usually with DOE, it would be, I'm trying to think, like requesting, everything is a part of the public record. So if you make a public records request to Department of Ecology for this water right, you would get the complete file, which is everything I've ever had.
So you're saying we would have to make that public record request?
I believe so. I don't wanna misinterpret your question, but there's no meetings outside of our public meetings. Any correspondence is just to finalize agenda items. And, someone from the group asked me for a draft, like an agenda prior to the meeting. And that's something I can always do, but they're essentially, it's a draft agenda item up until, because I literally got a phone call, when I was like out in the field last night at like 8 o'clock, telling me, should I come, it's draft form until I get here, but, anything that's public information, we will share with the public. Not a problem. I don't know if you guys have anything else to share.
Any more questions or comments? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I have one that I know wasn't mentioned. When the Chihuahua ditch was piped, or enclosed, it affected the amount of water that we had in our well, because there used to be seepage that would help charge that well. And if the water was restricted coming down, there would be a lot of people whose wells were affected, because now, through irrigation, that the wells are recharged along, the valley floor, and that would be greatly impacted as well.
What's your name, ma'am?
Reba.
Reba, what's the last name?
Reed.
Reed, okay. R-E-E-D?
Yes.
Okay.
Any more questions or comments? Okay,
Move on the agenda?
yes, let's move on to the agenda. Go ahead, Mark.
Chairman, before we move on, last
Today.
She indicated that there was going to be a person in Okanogan County who was going to be facilitating the SEPA notice process. And Lisa couldn't recall who that person was, and who is that contact person? So that, because there's a whole separate notice that's going to have to be done. We've already done the board's notice. There's a SEPA notice that needs to be done for the application also.
I have not been given that information, but I'll find out.
We could call Lisa and ask,
Megan.
Megan and ask her, and you might be right, that might be Perry. He was just in here.
Perry Houston, our Director of Planning, Okanogan County.
Okay, or he would
Perry
probably know
Houston.
who, if it's not him, right? Perry Houston.
He might know who if it wasn't him, yes.
Perry?
Perry with a P?
Yes, Perry.
Okay. Thank you.
His office would be in this building.
Right.
Okay.
You go out
Yeah, I was
that
gonna
door
say,
and
so you
up the
might be able to
steps and on
check
the
in with
left.
him before you leave, that might not be a bad idea.
Did you hear me, Mark?
His office is just.
Go out that door, up the steps, and the first door to the left.
Thank you. I just wanted to offer to leave some cards here if people want
Great, yeah.
me to email them something. I'm happy to do that.
Is there another sign-in sheet in the audience, or did I get all the sign-in? Did we get them all? Okay. We have two here, and I think there was a. Oh, did
There's
you
one
put
back
that
over
here?
here.
Okay, that's great. Perfect.
Ross?
What is next?
We need to, contact Gino on the phone and take care of the withdrawals, or we can probably hear Mr. Ryerson first, update on global ag.
Oh, sure, let's do that.
Okay, yeah.
Is he here?
Yeah.
Tim?
Do you wanna work on your stuff now? He's coming back. Okay.
Good afternoon.
Good question, is the Lundgren water right thing done at this point?
Yes, yes, we're finished with that today.
Just 'cause I think a bunch of these people might want to drive home and.
Thank you.
discuss it. Thank you.